Welcome back, folks, to the Traveller Character Biographies. When we last left off, we talked about the diplomat Yalen Jones. This character, while also from Lyon, is from very different circumstances, and is a very different person altogether. Enter Edwin Mann. Edwin Mann was not born to as rich or diplomatically favoured family as Yalen, but lived a relatively comfortable childhood on the lush planet. What captured Edwin's imagination was not the Imperial Consulate, but the Navy. The Space Navy. The stories he heard as a child of heroic officers braving space pirates and saving innocent civilian craft from peril, littered with medals, adulation, and high adventure. Edwin longed to become a naval officer and fly among the stars where everything was possible and it was endless adventure. When he reached 18, he had prepared as much as he possibly could for the enrollment exam and interview for the Navy. He'd studied everything. He'd gone through all the questions that they could ask. He'd done all he could. And yet he failed. He failed so spectacularly that he was just flabbergasted at how it could have all gone wrong. The questions were completely different. The exam had nothing he knew. It was as if everything that he had learnt had been for nothing. Resoundingly failing, and one of the lowest scorers in the exams, he felt disillusioned and disheartened that his dream would not come to reality. But there was a chance, his friends told him. He could still apply to be drafted. The Carrack uprising in the recent past had left many positions in the military open, while new recruits were being trained through more official means. And there was the chance that if he got drafted, they would assign him a naval position. Jumping at the opportunity without thinking about it, Edwin Mann applied, and was equally disheartened again to be informed that he was being drafted into what was effectively the police force of Lyon. Resigned to his position, Edwin Mann took up the position, for he had no choice since he had drafted himself in. He learnt the skills of a police officer and an investigator, but his heart wasn't in it. He learnt in his spare time, when given the opportunity for advanced training, how to use a shotgun, in the vain hope that it might turn out to be useful one day, if he ever joined the Navy. Little did Edwin Mann know that in his stumbling upon investigation files in the past, he came across some documents that had been mislaid. At first he thought it was merely an accident, but they had been mislaid on purpose. He found out that people within the Lyon police force had purposely been covering up events and activities of a notorious pirate gang known as the Star Slayers, feared throughout the system as ruthless and merciless pirates. Their base location was unknown, and the documents did not reveal that, but it did reveal several links to high-ranking police officials within his organization that were working sort of with them, forgetting events, not reporting them, not chasing them up properly. This information he brought to his superiors, some of which were actually the ones that were implicated. And this information got to the leader of the Star Slayers, Frederick Talatan. Frederick Talatan would not abide this knowledge becoming public knowledge. And quickly Edwin Mann realized that he had made a mistake. People knew that he knew this, and if he stayed in the police force, despite the commendation that he received for passing this information along, he would quickly die at the hands of the pirates, who were not known for subtlety when it came to assassinations. He left the organization quickly, as soon as his 4-year draft minimum expired, and thought to himself what he could possibly do to avoid this fate. He had done a great thing, and he had brought many people's eyes on him, some of them good, and in the case of the pirate lord, some of them not good. Then he thought back to his naval dream. If he was on the move all the time in the Navy, they'd never be able to track him down. And not only that, but he could still achieve what he'd always hoped to. Armed with a new vigour and a vague desperation to avoid getting horribly killed by space pirates, Edwin Mann reapplied on his second 4-year term to join the Navy, and was successful. In part due to the Navy elite knowing that he was honest in his dealings and would be willing to rat people out if it was for the good of the people in his organisation. In this case, the Navy. Honesty is something that is respected amongst the people that took his exam results, and so he was enlisted, much to his joy. Even with that, entering into the engineer and gunnery part of his career line, he struggled. That's the first. Getting used to the rigorous routines, the timelines, the events he had to do, the training. There was so much for him to take in, and so little time, that at first he struggled. But after the first 4-year period, he learnt how to maintain equipment, and had become more physically fit from the sheer vigorous exercise they had to do. His vessel was involved in a notable military engagement, and even despite his low ranking, he still had people under his command in a small squad during it. It was at this time that he met the indigenous barbarian from the planet Kamimu, Conard. It was described as a barbarian to him for the way that he seemed out of place and spoke in a manner not normal for the Navy. Having been drafted into the Navy to replenish the ranks of the Star Marines, Conard didn't take orders well. But he and Edwin struck up an unlikely friendship and worked together during the uprising that was the notable engagement. A minor rebellion on another naval vessel had to be dealt with, and it was Edwin's ship that was responsible for dealing with it. They worked together well, and they got to be friends, he and Conard. And after Conard's 4 years of mandatory service had expired and he wished to go back to his people and his way of life, Edwin helped him set up a more permanent communication method with him by use of a comms system, so that he could keep in touch with his friend. He managed to survive in the Navy, did Edwin, and in that second term he gained the ability to use turret guns on ships, which is a skill that he prided himself in. The third term, the third 4-year term, and the second in the Navy, he easily survived, now more used to the cut and thrust of Navy life, learning how to manage and maintain power systems in engineering, in spaceships. It was as if the Navy life was made for him. And it was in this confident stride in his life that he met the first serious romantic interest in his life, Samantha Amy. As he said, she corrected him quickly to be Amy Samantha, which wasn't much of an alteration. 2 first names, it was a way to trigger a conversation, and it turned into a friendship, and soon it turned into more than that. The relationship would endure through the entirety of his naval career, of which he passed again, and entered into the esteemed ranks of being a petty officer 3rd class. The 4th and final term in Edwin Mann's career had him survive easily and learn how to use sensors on board ships. His commanding officer, seeing a man with much potential, took a great interest in him and offered to teach him skills that would not normally have been taught to a non-officer. Edwin Mann had not made it into the official ranks of officehood, but through this small window where he was taught the fineries of naval tactics, he got a window into that dream career that he wanted to enter, and found out at that point that it was not what he thought it was. Contrary to the propaganda of officers fighting off space pirates and gallivanting off in single-man fighters, saving people's lives, officers had a lot of paperwork to do, and a lot of admin, and a lot of examining things, and routine. There was very little action. In fact, there was less action as an officer as you would have as a normal crew member. And it slightly broke the dream that he thought he had. This wasn't what he thought it would be. The officer knew this, and suggested to him that perhaps the Navy was not for him after all. With great reluctance, Edwin agreed. He still managed to advance in the career and ended his naval career as a petty officer, second class. And he took out with him a small sum of credits that he gained as a bonus, as well as a shotgun, and most importantly, a gift from the naval officer that had trained him in those final years, membership with the Traveller's Aid Society, a group that ran Traveller's Aid Society hostels throughout many top-notch starbases that would allow him easy and cheap access to good accommodation on his travels. He had been wished well, but there was still a hole in Edwin Mann's life. He still wanted to live that dream, travel the stars, and be an adventurer, but now that he'd found out that he couldn't do it through the Navy, he wasn't sure what to do. Aimless and seemingly without purpose, Edwin Mann considered his options. One of his options was drink, which he took to readily. And before he knew it, he often spent many of his nights at the bar. At 34 years old, Edwin Mann stands at just under 6 feet tall, with short, spiky black hair and stubble. The man is generally seen in semi-casual clothing, his shotgun, or a bottle of alcohol, never far from his side. A rather laid-back and carefree type of person, Edwin has always had 3 main loves in his life: tinkering with contraptions, dubious amounts of alcohol, something that has developed after his Navy career has ended, and his girlfriend. The Navy love has since faded, as he realised the dream was not what he thought it was. Whilst not one to shy away from a fight, he does his best to maintain a calm and level head where necessary, an after effect of his years in the Navy. Edwin Mann has strove to enter into a dream that he realised was not what it was. A love for tinkering in the Navy and a desire to become an officer of adventure and glory were not what they appeared to be. And Edwin Mann now waits for the opportunity to take that dream and have one last chance at achieving it. When we come back, folks, we shall talk about the third character of this traveller crew. I'll catch you next time. See you then. Later.